welcome on into the first edition of One Soccer Today 2025. Andy, Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson with you. Welcome back, guys. It's nice to see you.
Welcome back. It's been a long time.
Welcome back. You know, that's good.
No, I think you're just making that up. And I can see you did not take singing lessons during the break.
No, I did not.
You did not. But guys, for our first show, we've been handed a great deal of information to dive into. So a lot of news has happened, even just in this past week, even just as early as last night. Majority of us were on a call that introduced the new head coach for the women's national team. The search is over. Of course, after the dismissal of Bev Priestman, we were always wondering who would that be and how soon would they hire them. And now the decision has been made, and it's Casey Stoney who has taken over as the new head coach of the women's national team. She addressed the media yesterday, and she was alongside Canada Soccer CEO Kevin Blue when she did it. And she talked about why she accepted this job. Have a listen.
I think there was three real key factors for me. One was the playing group as it stands and the pathway talent that's coming through. It's incredible. And watching the journey they've been on, especially over the last year and what they've been able to do, I think in difficult circumstances. Having known some of the players, I think number two is the culture of the Canadian players and the people is something that I really aligned to from a values and principles perspective. And number three was it was such an extensive process that we went through. And I'll be honest, I had my doubts at first, but the more time I spent with Kevin and the leadership at the Canadian Association, the senior players that were involved, I wanted to be involved with an organisation that was led with real principles and values. And I felt the more time I spent with Kevin, the more I learned about his values and what he wanted to do with Canada Soccer, the more and more I became very engrossed in the project and the more determined I was that I wanted to be part of it.
All right, so there you go. Canada's new head coach. Ollie, what are your first impressions?
My first impressions are good. So Kevin Blue had a big smile on his face throughout that press conference, and I think he has every right to, because I think he's got a good one here. I think this is a good hire. Couple of things that stand out to me. Casey Stoney's been someone who is used to building things from scratch as a head coach. She was the first ever coach of Manchester United's women's team, taking them over in the second tier, I believe. And then she was the first coach of San Diego Wave when they came into the NWSL as an expansion team as well. So she's got that experience of building, I think, with a blank slate. And while it's not a complete blank slate with Canada, we obviously know that there's been, a lot of change, a really tumultuous time. And I think a program that right now is in need of a rebuild and a culture reset. And I think she is someone who is well equipped to do that. I also just like listening to her speak, not just in that press conference, but previously about the way she coaches and her kind of philosophy and most importantly, the way some of her former players speak about her as well. I think she is someone who is a pretty serious figure. She can be tough. She wants to win, but she does it without making everyone miserable, which I think is sometimes like the trade-off that you see with coaches where, you see the mind games and some of the manipulation and, treating people not very well is almost a test of like if they're strong enough, right, and tough enough. And I think she, is a much more kind of modern and progressive coach than that, which I think, again, when you hear some of the things coming out of that program on the back of the Olympics and over the last few years, it sounds like something I think they'll need. So I think they've done well here. I think she was probably the top the top candidate on the market.
Mm-hmm. How you feeling about that, Jordo?
Yeah, good. And she just mentions, right, in that short little presser with Kevin Blue, like principles and values. And I think that's something that needs to be restored into this women's program. I think it's also nice. I won't say rich history. That's a bit maybe too far, but like her history in football is great. Being like playing Chelsea and Arsenal as a youth, just growing up with the game, as Ali mentioned, which was a big standout for me, being the first coach for Man United Women's. Just the grassroots and bringing the game at that level. I think this is what we need. Objectively as well, I'm not going to lie, when I first heard the name or when you hear Casey Stoney, the first thing is like, another Brit. But I got over it quick. I did. I got over it quick. You do not want to just put someone in a box just because they're from a certain place, right? And all that we've experienced.
You never want to do that.
You don't want to do that, Ollie, right? You're one of my favorite people. I don't want to just say because you're a Brit, I'm going to put you in a box. One of my favorite. The list is long. But no, all jokes aside, I like that the time that's just coming. I like that we didn't take long. Canada Soccer. You could have. If you're looking into this next year, you could have taken your sweet time, but you're appointing the right person at the right time going into the new year to tackle this team fresh. So there's a lot to love about this new hire.
Yeah, and to your point there, Kevin Blue was asked about the candidates. He said there were around 40, maybe a little bit more, did say that Canadians were part of the interview process, and they ended up landing on Stoney for various reasons. And he also admitted that he relied a lot on the people around him for the football knowledge, so to say. Other people were the ones advising him, saying this is what she has, the chops when it comes to being able to be a coach, tactically, to your point, the history of being a player as well. So he said he relied on other people who just know the game better to tell him that she understands the X's and O's in a way that can be implemented with this national team and help them move forward. But he himself wanted to make sure that he knew the character was right. And he did say that it was actually the final game that Christine St. Clair played with Portland. He was in attendance for that. So that would have been back in November. He ended up leaving the game early because he had to hop on a plane to San Diego to meet with Stoney face to face. So he knew that the X's and O's were there. He relied on his football people to tell him that she has what it takes. Now he wanted to make sure that he had somebody with the kind of character and values that they wanted to bring on board. So there was a process. Obviously, we all know there's a process, but that gives us a little bit of insight and sheds some light on what Canada Soccer did, the amount of people that they interviewed here, and how they narrowed it down to her as well. But here's the thing, and another thing that was asked, and let's just address the elephant in the room. We know that there's been a lot of turmoil with this team, and it doesn't just have to obviously do with Dronegate, which is what we've come to call it. It's just also been, a little bit of, the push and pull with the players too, in the federation. We know that there's this ongoing lawsuit. There's a lot that's happening. And she was asked about that. And she seems to have a lot of faith, Jordan, in what Canada Soccer is doing now and moving forward. But what do you think, maybe it's on the pitch, maybe it's off the pitch for you, do you think are her biggest challenges?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think this team was at a crossroads. If you look at the players that have got it done for a long time and then the new emerging, I would say, stars that Canada has, it's at a crossroads. But that kind of happens every cycle, right? Every 4 years, you're looking at new players coming up and old players leaving. But I love the fact that going into camp now for all these players, that they're like, no one really feels safe. There are some players that feel more comfortable and confident than others because they're doing well and they've done well for the national team for a while. But I don't think there's anyone that's coming in and saying, oh, Stoney knows me, this is a cakewalk. Everyone has to go improve and impress. I will say it comes at a time where this season or this year, this calendar year, it's probably not going to be the best opposition that Canada plays, but you still have to come and bring your A game to camp. I love that it's fresh blood. I love that you get an objective view, and I love that it's someone that you can't fool a former player. Like, you just can't do it. In certain things where you're going 70% at training, managers that were former players will stop training and be like, you guys are holding back 30%, and that's not good enough. This is what Stoney will bring to Canada. I think this will elevate the level of players. And I'll get into which players in a bit, but it's just one of those things where you love having that fresh face coming in because they can just do what you do to me, Andy. Crack the whip. What? When you see me slacking off, you're like, pick it up, Jordan. Let's go. It's time. That's what you do. Everyone needs that. That was
a really good invisible whip crack.
Yeah, it was good.
I've been working.
How are you feeling about this as well, Ollie, where, you're kind of bringing someone from the outside in?
Yeah, I think, having a bit of an outside name is, for reasons we've talked about before, probably a good thing at this point, just to get a fresh pair of eyes on the team. She is certainly going to have a lot of time to assess the players and the whole pool of players, given what the schedule looks like this year. And I think that part of it is going to be a really big challenge. Like, she called it a blessing to have as much time as she has before an actual competitive tournament. I think that's a coach putting a positive spin on it and trying to have a positive outlook. I think this is going to be really difficult because, you can look at the way Jesse Marsh had the opposite with the men, where he's got two top opponents followed by a Copa America. And that could have gone really badly. It could have gone differently and put him in a really difficult spot. But it didn't. And by kind of having the team thrown in at the deep ends and having to have those competitive matches and come together very quickly, it gave them just massive momentum that I think has led into the place that they're at now. So there are benefits to having time in terms of, putting your imprint on the team. Like I said, looking at a lot of different players. But I think there's going to come a point at some point this year where we're saying, how many friendlies can we play here? What more can we get out of these games? And that is going to be a real challenge, I think, for her to manage and to keep the group kind of stimulated and motivated.
I think this is where her messaging is going to be key, because she was asked about that, right? In a year where no trophies are up for grabs, what are you realistically trying to achieve during these windows? And to your point, Ollie, she did say it was a bit of a blessing because now she has more time to work, perhaps more time to experiment. And what does that mean? Certain players that we haven't seen before, or players in certain positions we haven't seen them before in. But I wonder, like, Ollie, if this now becomes the messaging, because she is signed through the 2027 World Cup. There is also another option. There's an option year there after that, but we know she's going to be the head coach for the World Cup in 2027. So which players do you think could benefit? And, even some of the veterans, like, are they basically saying we've got to prove that we still deserve to be in certain positions here? Because how key will her messaging be to the players that, hey, we may not have any trophies up for grabs, but I need 100% all the time because decisions are being made for 2027?
Yeah, you'd hope so. You'd hope that there's the opportunity here to really have kind of something close to a blank slate and to be able to look at as many different players as possible and not select the squad based on kind of, history and past relationships. And that, I think, was a bit of a knock on Bev Priestman at times, was there seemed to just be a reluctance to give certain players an opportunity. We saw Mimi Aladu get very little in terms of a look in for a long time. And then now she's in the squad and looks like she completely belongs and has a lot to give. So there should be plenty of opportunity to look at lots of different players. And I think most importantly as well, hopefully a different style of football. And she mentioned this in the press conference too. We've got to see a team that plays with more attacking intent, that's more positive, progresses the ball from back to front a bit quicker, things she touched on already. I think there's an opportunity there for this team to take a big step forward.
Mm-hmm. What players are you looking at, Jordan?
Yeah, I think for me, you gotta you sat next to nearly every game that we've done, and I'm always just talking about the attacking three, but how Canada attacks. But I think that's something I'm looking at Stoney as a defender by trade. She's gonna be knowing how she wants her attacking 3-4 to just break down teams. And then who are you gonna gamble on? Like, when I watch Canada play, I know Nichelle Prince has had a moment at the number 9. I know injuries have just always allowed the team, when you get into a flow, then certain players are injured and you have to fill in. But who is she going to gamble on? Who's that number 9? And Stoney's last club as a player was Liverpool. And I look at an up-and-coming Liverpool star right now, and Olivia Smith, and I just wonder if that's going to be the horse that she gambles on and says, what, I'm going to start building this team around her for 2027. But then we talk about, it's not just one player, right? It's who's the front three, who's filling in, how are you going to attack? Are they a crossing team? Are they going to play between the lines? I'm delighted to have Stoney lead the helm, because I know that she's going to have her own distinct way and the culture that she's going to bring to this team. They're going to either buy in and die by that, or they're going to go down swinging. Do you know what I mean? So it's nice to have that. I think as a former defender, when you have a defensive coach coming in, they give you those 10, 15% that you need. So it's not even the Vanessa Gilles and Buchanan when she comes back and the Jade Rose that are going to benefit from Stoney at the helm. It's going to be someone like a Janet Okeke, like players that are young, that haven't even really been capped yet, and that are just going to play 1 or 2 games. Just seeing a defensive coach be at the forefront, you're going to get these little tidbits at training. So all those defenders, I think that's been kind of a strong point, but they're going to even excel that much more.
The good news for us, though, is that when we are watching these games, the women have a window in February. There will now seem to be purpose to what is happening, because let's just call a spade, guys. We were watching those last friendlies for the women, and we're like, what's your direction? We don't know. Who's your coach? What are you doing? What's happening? So now, thank you. We will have some purpose to line up some players going out there that we can discuss on our shows. Yay! Guess what? You know who else is excited? Toronto FC, because they have finally named their new head coach. As we know, it's 58-year-old Robin Fraser. He's the new head coach. And this will be his second stint with Toronto FC. He was an assistant coach under Greg Vanney from 2015 to 2019. Part of the incredible run there where they ended up going to, 3 finals in 4 years, winning in 2017. Does the return of Coach Robin Fraser inspire hope, Ollie? And I'm trying not to name the elephants in the room right off the bat. Maybe you will, but does it inspire hope?
I don't know about inspire hope. I think he's a good coach. I think it's a good hire, but I say that because not because I don't think he can be a good coach for Toronto FC, but because there's, as you alluded to, a lot more going on here. that it defines whether or not you can be inspired and feel hope about Toronto FC right now. So like what I think Robin Fraser gives them and why I think he's a good hire is he just gives them like a sense of trust and stability and clarity, right? Like this is someone, number one, who's been successful in MLS, both with Toronto FC, but also I think the job he did in Colorado is underrated. Like he took that team that was bottom of the league under Anthony Hudson. He said that we're bottom with a bottom group of players or whatever that crazy quote that got him fired was. And he took them within a couple of years to first place in the Western Conference. Like that's the only time in the history of that club since 96, they've won the West in the regular season. Best points per game they've ever had in a regular season under Robin Fraser. The other thing is that I think you can just trust the quality of his character. Like Jason Hernandez knows him. A lot of people at TFC will know him. And I think that gives you kind of the clarity of if you're trying to assess your roster, trying to assess individual players, if a player can't do it under Robin Fraser or isn't fitting in under Robin Fraser, they probably never will, right? So that gives you some ability to start to build this roster and understand what you've got. So those are all good things, but then you come to the but and all the other stuff here, and it's like, I think he is someone who can build the house, but what materials is he going to be given to build it, right? And if someone has already spent a lot of money, to extend this metaphor, on some really expensive windows that keep breaking, like, doesn't matter how good the builder is, like, what's he meant to do with that? So those are still the questions that I think have to be answered with TFC, and we don't have many answers to, as we'll probably get into a little bit here. But I think this is someone that you can have success with.
Yeah, I mean, if the house is not brick, it's made of straw. I mean, what's gonna? And so let's just address then the elephant of the room before I keep going and huff and puff and blow your house down. I'm one step away now from nursery rhymes. It's what, like, the challenges obviously that Fraser is facing here, Jordan, is like, this is the same squad? Yes, CF Montreal now has taken Prince Owusu, Toronto FC receiving Gam, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Lorenzo Insigne and Federico Bernardeschi. I mean, is he gonna change them now?
I'm gonna pick up on 2025 on the same thing we talked about in 2024. Ollie said it. Wheels has said it. I've said it. Andy, I feel like you thunk it at a point. You cannot go and take the same roster that everyone agreed needed. Everyone's even said it. The captains come out and said it and need to improve in every area. You take the same roster but put a different coach, and you're expecting a different result. It's not gonna fly. I understand with the Robin Fraser hire because you get glory days, but you don't have the glory roster. You look at the roster of the time he was there in 2015 to 2019. They were winners in that squad. They were game changers. They were players that hated to lose. More importantly, and you ask any coach, they can only do so much from the touchline. They have to go and let it all out to someone else who goes and acts out what they want to do. You had the Bradleys, you had the Outdoors, you had the Giovinco. When he was playing, should have ran for mayor. This was his city. You had all those guys and all those pieces. Now, the biggest thing I'll question is about the character. Do you have the same players for the TFC team now that hate to lose and want to do everything to win? I'll say from the last 2 years, if I'm being critical, they've shown otherwise, right? It's not every single player, but definitely Lorenzo Insigne has showed that he would rather be elsewhere. Bernardeschi has bought in a little bit, but again, it's just you're putting all this money in one player. It's tough for Robin Fraser. He's very brave to take this job at this time, and I know it's a great city and you have a lot of love with the fan base, but you just wonder how much will be different with the same roster.
So I then wonder what is the direction of the team? Now, we know that Toronto FC will be holding a press conference on Wednesday, and we'll hear from Robin Fraser. I wonder if we'll hear from Jason Hernandez as well, because what we want to know is, like, what is the messaging going to be to the fan base, Ollie? Right? Like, are they going to come in and say, well, we've got ourselves a new head coach, so playoffs it is and championship it is? Or is it like, hey, we're kind of in this, I mean, I know rebuild always still seems like a very scary word to a lot of sports teams, but is it like we're in a turnover phase? We're in a gotta figure, like, I don't know what it is. Like, what is that messaging going to be? Because it's hard to say rebuild when, to your point, you have those two Italian players making a ton of money. You're never in a rebuild when you have players like that making that kind of money. Or maybe Hernandez will come out and say, we're open for business. Anyone want Insigne? Out the door he goes. Or we found someone for him. Like, who knows? We'll wait and see what that messaging will be. But what do you think it should be to the fan base?
I don't know, because I think that has to come from internally, them kind of figuring out the entire organization here. And
you're not stupid, right? As a fan base, you're not stupid, and you're not going to be fooled.
No, I think it is possible to turn this around pretty quickly, but you've got to it's not enough just to hire like a couple of good people and think, they can do it for us. Like, you've got to compare to what you're competing against in the modern MLS. And even when you compare it to the previous TFC, the most successful iteration of TFC, like, it's not just like a good coach and a good GM and a couple of good players. Like, you had Tim Lewicki come in and completely take a sledgehammer to that club in terms of vision, in terms of intent. You had a star GM who's gone on to win multiple MLS Cups. You had a star head coach who's gone on to win multiple MLS Cups. You're incredibly aggressive with the DPs in terms of who they went and got. Players in the prime age of their careers who cost a lot of money. They were great on analytics. The culture was fantastic. The leaders so on and so forth. There are so many different components that go into winning in this league. And it feels like right now, how many of those do they have? It's very difficult to say. So it's not just the head coach. It's not just the Insigne and Bernadeschi situation. You've got to put a whole picture together here. And I still think there's a lot of unanswered questions as to what that looks like.
Yeah, Andy, they got to lower expectations. Sorry, they have to.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Expectations is what you're saying.
You have to. You can't go and say Robin Fraser's coming in. Hey, we're gonna compete in playoffs. I understand everyone's gonna go. You have the same group. Who's scoring goals for Toronto FC? Who are the leaders you look up to when the game's tied 1-1 in the 70th minute? There's so many things that you have to strip away. And again, you can maybe bring in a couple of players and things might get better. But the glory days, as I'm going to call it, the 27, 2018, 20, those days are long gone. And I just don't think one man is going to go and change that when the roster is what it is.
Well, and I think the biggest question, too, is what kind of power does he have? Because if you go back to those days that you're referring to as well, I've said this before, Tim Lewicki really entrusted, Tim Bezbatchenko and Greg Vanney to work together. So there was a real understanding, not just on how you were going to coach, but, Vanney had a lot of input in these are the types of players I need, because that's how it's going to work. Who is Robin Fraser reporting to in that sense? Is that Jason Hernandez now, or does there still need to be another person?
Is there going to be a president? Yeah.
Yeah. Is there going to be a president? Is there going to be another person? How much say will Fraser have in I know you like that guy, but he doesn't fit what we've got right now. How much, because that was also, we know, the bone of contention and why Greg Vanney ended up leaving, because Bill Manning didn't want to give him that same type of relationship that he had with Bezbatchenko. He wasn't really having that with Bill Manning and Ollie Curtis, right? So yes, it starts, I think, behind the scenes and off the pitch, but then it should manifest on the pitch. And I think that's where a lot of people are still left a little bit, scratching their head, because there still seems to be a lot of shoelaces untied behind the scenes still with Toronto FC. But we'll see what the organization has to say when they do speak to the media on Wednesday. Another Canadian MLS team, guys, we know has a new head coach after Vanni Sartini and Vancouver Whitecaps agreed to part ways at the end of the season. They now appear to have hired. Now, you would know this better than me, Jordan. Is it Jesper or Jesper Sorensen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you stick with your guns, Chill.
I know. I knew it. I knew it in my heart. Jesper Sorensen. All right. What should we expect?
Tactics. The one thing everyone asks me, what did you learn in Denmark? I said tactics. You spend an hour and a half before a game thinking about how the other team's going to play. This is going to be a guy coming with fresh ideas, but is going to live by tactics. I played against him, or his team, because he's a bit older than me, but his team in Fredericia for 3 seasons, scored my favorite goal against him. We've also I don't want to just dig up some stuff. His bald head and my shiny forehead have maybe met. I didn't go forward.
Whoa.
We just met in the tunnel a little bit. Shout out, when I heard his name,
I'm in a huddle. What is this, rugby? What do you mean?
No, just sometimes you're leaving a pitch and things get heated, and then someone's in your face and you're moving a player away, and then he's there, I'm there. I don't want to get a red card. Wow. Just smile. For the kids at home, never headbutt someone who has a bald head. I've learned this from a young age. Though that head coming forward, that's leaving a mark. That's splitting something open. Yeah, you relax. But a passionate man, and in the Danish football world, playing with Brøndby or coaching at Brøndby, AJ, big clubs he's been at. But I just wonder what that transition is going to be coming into the MLS, specifically Vancouver, because Vanni Sartini was this guy that had so much charisma and left it on the pitch, and you could see it within their group. I think Jesper Sørensen is going to be a little bit different, right? I think he's going to be a player, at least he was when I played against him, that was very to the book. charismatic in his own way, but for me, my opinion on Danish people as well, they're kind of just like that. Like they're very humble, but like to the bone. We'll see what he brings to Vancouver, but hopefully we're not headbutting each other.
No, that would make it awkward for everybody. But here's the thing: just as we've listed off a lot of distractions that Canada Soccer still has with bringing in their new head coach on the women's side, the distractions that Robin Fraser is still going to have when it comes to a lot of things with Toronto FC, Vancouver Whitecaps aren't void of distractions either. And Ollie, we know that the big talk, of course, is it was announced that they are up for sale. Any takers, any bidders, like they are up for sale, and players are already having to answer, like, are you going to be here in Vancouver? What's your future going to look like? What do you think, as a coach as well, how do you temper these types of distractions? Because I wonder if it's going to be difficult to bring players in long-term, to sign players because they don't know if that's what you're going to be. I just don't know, what it's like to be a player, knowing that your franchise is up for sale and there's uncertainty there.
Yeah, it's not easy. You just hope that they can kind of have the continuity of having a real go this year with the group they've already built, right? But beyond that, it is an open question, and particularly in MLS where, it doesn't seem all that certain that this is just going to be another group taking over the Vancouver Whitecaps and continuing to run the Vancouver Whitecaps. Like, you do have to wonder about that in MLS, because I think this league is getting close to capacity in terms of how many teams it can possibly fit in one league. And that starts to open up the possibility of clubs moving. And, I don't want to fearmonger about it. If there's a group in Vancouver that, is going to keep the team there and be the kind of ownership group that MLS is looking for, then fantastic. But if that group is somewhere else, and there's clearly a better group that wants to take the team elsewhere to a different city, I think that's what MLS is going to go with. So there's not a lot of certainty here. But in terms of the appointment, I kind of like that they're going outside the box a little bit, and it's a bit of a gamble, someone who hasn't coached in or outside of Denmark. But I think sometimes the Whitecaps need to gamble and do things a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. All right. So there you go. How about that? 3 coaches in new environments. And what a way to start off our first show of 2025 here on OST. But we're not done, gentlemen, because as is customary, it is time for our Tony Bet top picks. Okay, let's wrap it up with our focus on Wednesday's Premier League action. So whoever you want to choose here, we have Everton, Aston Villa, Arsenal, Tottenham, Leicester, Crystal Palace, Newcastle, Wolverhampton. So what are you?
Jordan?
Shout out to Christian Jack and Charlie O'Connor. Aston Villa's winning this one for sure. And I'm not going to say that I don't bet. That was 2024. 2025, I'm betting someone else's money. Aston Villa's taking this by 2 goals.
Whose money? Whose money you
betting? Don't watch that, chill. Don't worry about it.
Listen, that's for your child's university tuition.
Gamble black. Throw it down.
Oh, man. All right. Okay, Ollie?
I mean, it's a big price on Tottenham, plus 540 to win at Arsenal.
There's only one team in North London, Ali. Next question.
That's tempting. Obviously, Spurs in a bit of a mess right now, so it's tough to back them, but that price would never normally be that big. I kind of like Everton as well. David Moyes back. I think he could see a little bit of improvement early on.
Ali coming with spicy takes.
Little disappointed that Liverpool isn't playing, only because it would have been a great segue for me to be like, have you seen Jurgen Klopp's new commercial on travel, the Trivago and getting the great deal?
No.
You can't miss the teeth, guys. You can't miss the teeth. He's doing commercials now about getting great prices going on vacation. What happens? You're not coaching anymore. You get to live the life. These coaches here are under stress. We're betting on them. You're going to lose.
It's a drug.
Win. This guy's on vacation. Good for him.
He earned it.
A little bit. You know what? The acting is okay. It's okay. Just like your performance here today, guys, was A-okay. See you next time on One Soccer Today.